Cheers.
I'm Ziad. I use he, him pronouns, and I am Bangladeshi American.
And there's a lot of people who said that was rude, you shouldn't have done that. The truth is, the pronoun stuff is ridiculous, and I think ridiculous things need to be ridiculed.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies, welcome back to the Officer Tatum Show. I'm your host, Brandon Tatum. Make sure you text Tatum to 53445. Text Tatum to 53445. I've been having all kinds of guests all night here at Amfest. VinceDao is one of the most incredible people that I've ever listened to.
Thank you.
The clip that I didn't watch the whole thing, but I want you to explain it. The fool was talking about he was talking about genders or whatever, and you rolled your eyes at that guy and like.
So he came in and introduced himself as I'm Zad. I have my he/him pronouns.
He/him pronouns. That's
and
what he said.
Yeah, I just rolled my eyes. I'm glad the cameras caught it because I was like, it's just a natural reaction. And there's a lot of people who said that was rude. You shouldn't have done that, or you acted triggered. It's like, no, I didn't yell at him or. But the truth is, the pronoun stuff is ridiculous, and I think ridiculous things need to be ridiculed, right? And really, that's the only way we move back the clock on these issues is we have to start ridiculing people for acting stupid, know, and when we act scared or we're too, polite. I'm not saying to be rude, but when we ignore ridiculous things, they continue and they get worse. So
right, because as a man, you have him being soft as wet toilet paper.
Yeah,
not standing up for what's real. Acquiescing to the culture.
Yeah.
And, I don't even think he really feels that way, but he's saying what he think he should say. But then somebody like you brings it back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this question, Vince. Were you always a conservative?
I think I always had certain conservative instincts, but when I was in middle school and stuff, I was kind of on that Bernie Trump populist pipeline, so I was kind of like a left-wing populist, if that makes sense. But I was always kind of a Bill Maher leftist, I was anti-woke, and that's really what eventually just drove me to the right, because I was just like, screw this stuff, I remember in 8th grade, I got in a big fight with a class feminist, and that was a big thing known at my school, so.
Yeah, man, I mean, every time I hear you talk, man, you're so eloquent, you articulate yourself very well, you have strong opinions, you're a strong Christian.
Thank you.
Do you think that it's your Christian faith that caused you to be as bold, or is it just your knowledge of these particular political issues that make you bold?
Well, it's really conservatism that brought me to Christian faith, being around all you guys. And because growing up, I grew up in LA, I grew up with a secular family and all that stuff. But I think it was coming to Christ that gave me a new conviction to stand on, maybe certain things that I was a little more scared to talk about before, whether that's LGBT or kind of the gender issues and things like that. So certainly. That's
awesome. What was that interview about? Because I was on their show. What were they called again? That group?
Vice?
No. It was you were on Vice. I was on the other show, Jubilee.
Yeah, Middle Ground. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on Middle Ground, and it was conservative men versus trans men. Oh my God, it was crazy because we all showed up and we didn't know who was who, right? Uh-huh. And I saw a dude with a beard, and I thought he must have been conservative because he can't be a woman.
Right.
But the dude was a woman.
Right.
I mean, he had a beard, he had a deep voice. I mean, it was crazy to me. It was like 3 of them that looked like men with I think one of them had an Adam's apple. Mm-hmm. And so it was very, crazy when I saw that, but we had a really good conversation. And I was able to still disagree with the way they were doing it, but I could at least understand from their perspective. In the interview that you did for Vice, did you take away anything from having that, I would say, difference of opinion with some of those individuals? Because I know that some of them was completely crazy. But was it something that you took from that? Meaning that you left feeling a little bit different about those people who were acting woke?
I mean, if you want me to be totally honest with you, they kind of kept trying to set us up to that one moment of agreement or shake hands or whatever. But I guess I am fine with them I love them as individuals. Right. But I was never gonna have that moment because it was like these people out here saying ridiculous things. They're all basically Marxists, and they're I think the gender stuff, for instance, is satanic. Right. And I'm not gonna just sit there and pretend for the sake of having that big moment of unity. I don't find myself unified with those people. Right. And I think conservatives sometimes need to understand this more. It's like, if a lot of those people had their way, we would be in gulags, or maybe we would be dead. Right. And I'm not saying to do that back to them, but to kind of feel like the most important thing we have to do, instead of standing for what's right, instead of standing by our ground. The biggest thing we have to do is like cede ground to them or kind of reach some type of mutual understanding with them. I don't buy that, and it never works. Does it ever work?
Right, never works.
When Trump or whoever tries to give them a concession, what do? They still call them the same names, and then you just ceded something to them, right? So that's kind of what happens. So
I think that you're hitting on a topic that I think is very important. When I talk about being a Christian, you have to follow Christian principle.
Right.
You can't say, and I hate it saying this because I know people get offended by it, but I don't believe you can say that I'm married to a man marrying a man and say I'm a Christian. I don't believe that is true. You can vote for Republicans and still marry another man, but I feel like we have to draw the line and say, I love you, but what you're doing is against God.
Right.
And I feel like conservatives are afraid to say that.
Right.
I know people that are here right now that are living that lifestyle. I don't agree. I love you, but I don't agree. And conservatives have to draw the line in the sand at some point and say, we have to stand up to some of this because it's a slippery slope. Republicans signed on to that marriage protection bill or whatever it was called. I don't even remember what it's called, to certify gay marriage as legitimate marriage, to codify it or whatever the case may be. I don't think that we should have done that because it's a slippery slope. Because then they're going to be punitive against churches. Do you believe that will be the next step, being punitive against churches who will refuse to marry two men?
Oh, I know that will be the next step because I know Mike Lee tried to introduce an amendment to that bill to give more religious protections for churches, and obviously, that didn't happen. They passed the bill anyway. And look, let me say this. I think any society that cannot preserve institutions, or just, I wouldn't call them institutions, they're not. They're just basic constructs of God, as basic as marriage, as basic as gender, those things are bound to collapse. And it's really sad to see, obviously, so many Republicans getting on board with that when just 5 to 6 years ago, every single Republican candidate ran on, I'm for traditional marriage.
Right.
Every single one. So, yeah.
I love that, man. I appreciate you. Vince, how do people follow you? I got 1 minute left, but how do people follow you? Where can they see your content? You're a brilliant young man. Tell the people how to find you.
You can find me mainly on YouTube, just my name, Vince Dao. Just type it in the search bar.
Spell it for him.
VINCE, Vince, DAO. And then my Instagram is just the Vince Dao, one word.
Vince Dao.
So, yeah.
Okay, man. Listen, he has my endorsement. You need to go on and you need to follow him. Every time I get a chance to share your stuff, even if I don't share it, I look at it and I say, this young man is brilliant. The future of conservatism, strong conservatism, not the weak conservatives, but you are the future of conservatism. Vince, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Let's do this again sometime.
I appreciate it. I mean, anytime. You're the man. You're the man. Now, we got to go to break here.